Well, welcome everyone to the Seeking Awesome podcast. This is episode 2, and we are super excited to have Brian Pitzer. He is the CEO of Evolve Growth, and as I look at your business card, CEO stands for Chief Evolution Officer, right?
That's right. A little bit different than chief executive. That's
That's
right.
right. Although you get to do the chief executive stuff too.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. So, what I know of Brian, I've known Brian for several years. I've known him as he's worked through some entrepreneurial ventures. I've known him as a sales professional. He's done some work with me, working with entrepreneurs and small business folks around sales and building revenue. We'll talk a little bit about this later, but people say sales, and if they said building revenue, that might actually get them in a better mindset. So we can talk a little
That's
bit
right.
about that. But so Brian, just give us a little bit of sense, maybe what Evolve Growth is and what you guys do, and then if you want to kind of shift back to when you first got into sales and entrepreneurship, and what kind of excited you about that, and what's your journey been like to get to this point?
Sure. Yeah. So evolve growth. My frustration with consultants and trainers and coaches has been around, especially on the sales side, where um, for some reason there's not always a whole lot of expectations placed on getting things done. And to your point, and something that we'll want to talk a little bit more on, Mike, is that um, for whatever reason, sales tends to be one of those things that just really eludes a lot of people. It's seems like it should be the easiest thing to increase, but the problem is that everybody seems to have challenges. So I think there is such a high demand for people who know how to sell, people who know how to get things done in the revenue increasing area, that those consultants, those people who have given you ideas, get a lot more slack and a lot more leeway. So at Evolve, we actually like to take a step further where we not only help get the idea and create the plan, but actually implement it as well. So in the short run, it's kind of where you're VP on staff, your VP of sales, and then long run, once we've got all the kinks worked out for your company, we do prospecting and business development, and actually set the appointments for you as the owner or the head of sales or whatever that position would be to go close the deals. So essentially, while we're not the one stop shop for everything, we essentially make sure that growth gets done and revenue generation is possible. So that's really what the company in itself does. We can go into, I guess, a little bit in the background here in a minute. So
Sure. So if you take us back to how did you get into sales? I mean, what was your evolution to get, kind of where you are today?
yeah, so I went to Ohio State, and you've got these when you get a marketing degree. There's different paths you can go, and marketing is and sales are so kissing cousins, if you will. They're very very close, hands on, very connected. Um, but they're so different. They're radically different, and just simply because marketing is a little bit more of the tools that are used by sales team members, and but there really wasn't, and I don't know if there is now. I think there's more of a focus, but there wasn't a sales degree. I think that if there would have been a sales degree, I would have pursued that. But when you graduate with a marketing degree, you've got one of two options. It's either go into the creative side, which also could be the analytical side, which it didn't interest me. It wasn't the fun portion of it. And then the other side is all about doing, and that's the sales side, and that's the side that again has been forever treated almost as if it's a a secret, or nobody really has the ability to actually know what they're doing and how they're doing in such a way that we can formulate it and make it more predictable. So that's the side that I've enjoyed, is the sales side that marketing can't always do just by thinking about it. So
So you've, what are some of the types of jobs and positions that you've done over time? So, I mean, I know when we first met, you
Right.
were running an entrepreneurial venture, but prior to that, I know that you had done, you know, led sales teams and done different things.
Yeah. So, and it's a really good question because, and I think it'll lead us potentially in different paths, or at least
Yeah.
lead conversation in different paths. But the difference between starting a new entrepreneurial venture and being a salesperson are almost one and the same. For anybody that wants to start an entrepreneurial endeavor, you got to be that chief cheerleader. You have to be. It's not always just sitting and planning. In fact, most of it is sales. So that's something to be considered when we talk about it later. But as far as position that I've had in the past, again, I graduated with a degree in marketing. Kind of thought I'd be heading into marketing, but then went right into outside sales with a very rapid growth company, and really did well doing that. In the course of starting in that position, I think a little bit of my strengths were uncovered in the sense that I was able to start planning and strategize. So a little bit more of the upper level sales tactics and strategies, but also still the day to day activities that come with just kind of being an entry level account executive. So again, kind of moved up fast through the food chain there. Moved on to another vice president of sales job. I did that three different times prior to starting Avite. But every time, vice president of sales, it means really nothing. I mean, all that is that you're kind of the highest of the food chain on the sales side. You're still doing every bit the exact same sales activities and techniques as somebody that first walked in the door.
So typically, what this podcast does is that it talks about three areas, but one is career growth, one is business, obviously, and from a career standpoint. So in the past, I've done some work with students here at Columbus State. I've done work with obviously small business owners, and I've done work around interns and things of that nature. So a lot of the small business owners that I deal with, they want to find an intern to come and do their sales or do sales for them. And as we look at interns, we have trouble finding folks that want to do sales. And I
Yeah,
think that part of that kind of gets back to what you were saying. If you're in marketing or even if you're in business administration or business management, you know, sales is a dirty word. And I think that this perception of the used car salesman, not that there's anything wrong with used car salesmen, because I've always
I
bought
get it.
used cars,
Yeah, I
but
get it.
I mean, it's this perception around that that really causes people to look at the career as a challenge. What are your thoughts on sales as a career in terms of allowing you to kind of take control of your what you're doing?
Yeah, really good question. So, a lot of thoughts. So, starting with the very first thing you said, potentially getting an intern in to do sales. Um, at that point, when somebody's in college, I think if you do find something or someone that would be interested in sales, it's because they're good at it and they've had it naturally in their lives. I think that you're very hard pressed to find that, and I think that if you're actually looking for a sales professional to help you from the intern ranks, I think you're probably going to be looking for a long time. Um, a lot of that comes to two different pieces. One, sales is tough, and that's why I mean that's why entrepreneurs, that's why anybody in that field wants to look for somebody else to do it.
Right.
Is that it is hard as heck, and there is a lot of hand holding, and interns can be a challenge in the first place because they don't always know what they don't know, and looking for direction, looking for pointed in the right place. Well, sales, there's no map. There's really no, I mean, it's just all about making something happen. And so that can do attitude is what's key. So if you are looking for somebody from an internship standpoint and or um, even just hiring somebody at any point, that can do attitude is really going to be paramount. But I think it's you're going to be very difficult to find that. To your other point, you're spot on. It's so funny. It, again, I think it's because it's so poorly understood there is a weird taboo that goes with sales. Sometimes if somebody's really good at it, they kind of get, like you say, that snake oil salesman, or they're slick and smooth, and I think that goes with the general fear of somebody potentially being able to control you, or change your mind and move your thoughts in different directions. And we kind of have a predisposed feeling to that. Anymore, though, sales to me is less about it's there's always going to be the tenacity. You're always going to have to put in the heavy work. You're always going to have to outwork somebody to get through it and get things done. But it's less about being able to smooth talk somebody. It's a little bit more about really understanding where you can add value, and where the person that you're working across the table from, where they have a pain or a need, um, and being able to find if your company or what you're selling from a solution side, um, or a service, whether that how that fits in, and really use your critical thinking to empathize with the person across the table with what they're looking for, but also understand what we do best, and position that in so that they mesh together well.
When I talk to entrepreneurs and I talk to small business owners, you hit it right on the head. They all want somebody else to come in and do the
Yeah,
sales for them, right?
it's hard,
But
right?
the challenge is that typically they don't have the funds to do that, number one. Number two, it's their deal, it's their passion. To be honest, they probably should be the best salesperson for it. I mean, they started
That's
this
right.
business for a reason, and they know why they started it. They know the value proposition and all of that. But they don't see themselves as salespeople. So, what would you tell, or what do you tell entrepreneurs, small business owners that, at an earlier stage, that the owner's still doing a lot of stuff when it comes to the sales process? What do they need to think about? What should they be doing?
You're so what you said was spot on. I mean, really, if you're going to start a business again, kind of like what we said at the very beginning, you better be ready to roll up your sleeves and get into the selling mode. If that scares you, good. It should scare you a little bit. It should make your belly a little uneasy. Um, but like you said, you have to be that chief cheerleader. You have to be the number one person from a sales standpoint, if you're going to start a company. Um, Everybody's gonna look for the easiest way out of that. So, like you say, hiring somebody is generally, I need to hire a salesperson. Yes and no. It's a double-edged sword. If you can't sell it, then you better imagine that somebody else isn't going to be able to sell it as well. The other tricky part that goes along with that is that salespeople a lot of times have a propensity to be, they can get lazy. So
Right.
there's a really, and it is what it is. And there's a really fine line. I see it a lot of times with young companies where they'll want to hire a heavy VP of sales type of position. Oh, this person's been with this company or that company. And usually that's kind of a kiss of death, if you will, because that person probably hasn't been doing their own dirty work for a while, so they don't remember how to get their hands dirty, especially in a young startup environment. So um, what you really want is somebody, again, that has the passion, like you say, the energy, and as long as you as a business owner can really convey that to that person and help them feed off of the passion, the energy, and get in there with them on it, um, then you're going to be okay. But again, if you're looking for somebody to take all of sales, be careful. It's a very, very deadly game to play, because you're putting your entire company's future in the hands of somebody else. And that's why there is such a heavy demand for the back end of what we do, because the amount of value that comes with putting a person in front of a decision maker is very, very challenging. And certainly, for every one appointment you got to make 50 to 75, maybe even 100 calls to get that one appointment. So there's a lot of no's that go along with it.
The thing that I've seen. So if let's say that you're an entrepreneurial company, you're starting to grow, you're starting to actually hire in, some other people on your management team. They're going to pick this up. You know, the Look at the different pieces. The COO obviously is critical. The chief financial officer is critical. But the chief salesperson, that's the one that can really crash the ship. I mean, you hit it right on the
No
head. If
doubt.
they don't know, how to work within that entrepreneurial environment, they're not used to going out and doing these types of things. And I have a friend who will ultimately be on the podcast also,
Yeah.
but her thing is that when she is working in terms of managing salespeople, and this would go to from an owner standpoint to managing the head of sales.
Sure.
When she's talking about managing salespeople, it's like give them a short leash. You need to provide the training, you need to help them get out, you need to support what they need to do, but at the same time, if you're 30, 60 days and they're not cutting it, you need to move because
That's
that
right.
is literally crashing what you're trying to do.
Boy, Mike. I mean, geez, so many different thoughts, and they're all really spot on. It's small business owners have a kind of a catch-22 with salespeople. If the salesperson is they're they could be very weak, but there's a hesitancy to unload a salesperson because they do control, potentially control a relationship or control the purse strings. So no matter how bad they are, there's a hesitancy to fire
Right.
somebody who's not doing their job. So it's a challenge there. And to your friend's point, she's spot on in the sense that um, a bad hire, especially from that position, it's if you wait 6 months to really determine whether they're on the right track, 6 more months to terminate, 6 months to hire the new person, 6 months. I mean, a bad hire is going to cost you a couple of years worth of potential revenue, which is just I mean, it's just a killer for small businesses, especially when you're really putting that kind of effort in there. And the challenge again with sales is unlike a CFO or unlike a COO, where everything is pretty documentable, everything is pretty straightforward with what you're doing. Progress from the sales standpoint is very challenging to really understand and really um, be able to pencil in exactly where you're at. So somebody really could be right on the cusp of doing amazing things, or they could think they were, and then you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and nothing really happens.
Right, right. So let's shift a little bit of gears here. So if you were advising a recent college grad who is
Sure.
considering some different options, you had to run, I mean, marketing, everybody wants to go do marketing because it's kind of
Yeah.
cool and you
So
can,
fun,
yeah,
right?
it's
So
fun stuff,
exciting,
right?
right?
But there's only so many of those and there seems to be a lot more sales positions. What would
Sure.
you counsel this person to do if they were actually looking at a sales position? What are some of the key things that they need to bring to the table, but key things that they need to be aware of that are going to come at them?
Yeah. So first and foremost, if a person's got a good personality and they really enjoy working with people, that you don't have to be necessarily extroverted, but you want to be able to, if you can converse and feel good about doing it and see somebody else's side of the things, then you're probably a good candidate. That's certainly the most important portion of sales. So I would definitely encourage you to push forward and look at that further because the upsides from sales are just tremendous. If you can get your foot in the door, if you can be good at it, um, you can write your own ticket. That revenue generating side of things is always in demand, and again, it's you'll be worth your weight in gold. Um, some of the key pieces again, being able to connect with people, being able to draw parallels between problems that they may have and solutions that you can provide. That's a problem solving skill that's essential. Probably even more than that though is just your outlook on things, your outlook on life. Are you a glass is half full? Everybody likes to think they're super optimistic, but sales is one that you'll find out real fast how optimistic you are. And Mike, in sports, we always look at it like a short-term DB, like a defensive backs mentality, where you got to forget that last play because the next play is just as important, and that's the way sales is. If you hang up on your last fail or your last miss, you're toast. So you got to be able to get over those really quickly. So the the tenacity with which you approach things, the can-do attitude. We've said it a few times. The ability to look at opportunities where others wouldn't see it. The ability just to charge forward and not think too much about it. Thinking is ultimately a lot of times your worst enemy in the sales side of things, because thinking um, sounds really strange to say don't think too much, but that's
Right.
really what you need. You just need to do, get after it. If you get after it, things start happening, and that's really the crux of our organization, which is let's get in front of people, let's make something happen, and then let's fix it from there. But if there's that hesitancy, if there's a tentative, timid nature, probably it's not going to be a great position for you if you don't necessarily like asking for things. But I remember when I was a kid, I had no problem going and returning things to the store, or
Right.
asking for something extra, or it's kind of that mentality of just you don't get what you don't ask for, and if you see the world like that, then you're probably a real good candidate for sales.
Right. You know, this thought of that you brought up, which I think is really good, and I think this is a good thought, period. But don't overthink stuff. Just do. You know, I mean, I mean, I've done it historically, and I overthink, and I'm like, well, what if I do
Yeah,
this? What if I do that? And I need to
that's right.
prep this, and I need to prep that, and I delay and I delay and I delay, and then by the time I finally do make the call or something, I mean, it all may be done. They don't need whatever. Whereas, it's just get your ducks in a row, know what you're talking about, but then
Right.
just go. I mean, that seems to be just a more
We
than just
see
a
it.
sales. That's life.
You're
Hmm.
right. We see it a lot in with companies that we work with, where you, you think so much that what you end up finding is that for years, almost on end, companies can plan on top of planning on top of planning. But the problem is that since you've never actually even tried that, you're anticipating something that may or may not occur, and your plans are only, I mean, even the best planning on earth is only half right when it comes to execution. In fact,
Right.
Mike Tyson, I'll send it to you. Mike Tyson had a really fun quote one time where he said something to the effect of, you know, all your planning spectacular until I punch you in the mouth. And that was, that's Mike
Right.
Tyson for you. Is you can plan, but in reality, that's life too. That you can plan, but the world has a way of punching you, and all bets are off once you do get punched. So, plan, but also recognize that it's going to be half incorrect. No matter how hard you plan, you don't know what's coming. So, the sooner you can get out there and really try it and see what's working and what's not, that implementation slash execution is so much more important than the planning itself. And we have a lot of steps that we go through, phases, stages, if you will, at Evolve. Actually, there's nine, but execution. It all starts with execution, and that is the single most important, because even execution done improperly or poorly is going to lead to some sort of positive result. It may not be a great result, and it may not be as well as if you would have studied and trained hard, but even any type of even going out and trying to do it some way is going to lead you further down the road. From there, refinement is the second most important piece in our book, because if you can go out and try it, break it, fix it, try it again, break it, fix it, try it, break it, fix it. And then a distant third is planning. So it's
Right.
really odd, because planning actually takes a back seat on every endeavor to actually trying it, and then once you're trying it, fixing what you're missing.
Right.
Um, so yeah, there's a tendency to overthink it, and also too, Mike, we don't like doing things that hurt us or that feel like they could be painful.
Right.
So if there's a fear of, I mean, nobody wants to get shot down, but that's what sales is. I
Right.
mean, it's your whole job is to overcome that getting shot down.
Right. Right. So, give me your thoughts on this. So, I have an entrepreneur come into my office one time. My office was on Goodale Boulevard. For those in Columbus, know what I'm talking about. And he came in, and he was had some sort of product that did something, doesn't matter, but
Right.
it fit to a number of businesses literally down Goodale Boulevard. So he's sitting in my office saying, how do I use social media to reach these businesses? And obviously my response is, number one, why don't you pick up the phone, just call them because
Right.
they're
That's
right
right.
down the street, or just go down the street
Yeah,
and
you're right.
stop in. I
Yeah,
mean,
you're right.
you know, I'm sure you see a lot of this with entrepreneurs. You probably see this a lot of with business owners or salespeople that want to do marketing, that want to do social media, whereas really, if your brand is strong enough and you've done all of that kind of stuff, it really does come down to being willing to pick up the phone or being willing to go stop in.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how great the product is. None of that really truly matters at the end of the day. Yes, of course, that's going to, if it's not a good product or service, yeah, you're going to have problems, and there's no overcoming that. But that the adoption phase, there's no real silver bullet, and everybody loved to say, "Oh, if I got this on the Oprah Winfrey show," or
Right.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
we've all
Hmm.
got that. We've all heard that a million times. Or man, if I could only run the Super Bowl ad for this, well, yeah, well, no kidding. That's why it's there. That's why there is no silver bullet per se. But um, to your point, it is, and it's that's what you got to do. You just got to get out and go do it. It's all about doing, all about doing, all about failing, all about trying again, failing, trying again, trying again, trying again. And for every X number that you do that you fail, eventually one's going to win. So um, but again, as humans, we are conditioned to be afraid of things like that. And in reality, if we can change the way we look at falling down, it's not falling down that's hurting you. It's when you stay down. If when you fall down, you get back up and you learn how to combat that next time. So your friend or the guy that came into your office, yeah, go knock on the door. And when he tells you or she tells you, get out of here, go to the next person. And then go to the next person and go to the next person. And right when you feel like you're about ready to quit, go to the next person. And they tell you no and go to the next person. And that's just the way it is. And then eventually it starts breaking. The harder you work, the more, the truth kind of starts to set in.
Right.
So,
Right. So what I want to do is kind of wrap up here. This has been great, and I
sure.
appreciate everything that you're bringing to the table. We'll
Yeah, it's fun.
definitely have you on at different times, and
Please.
at some point, I'm going to bring on co-hosts and things of that nature. So we've already
Sure.
talked about maybe you and I actually interviewing Rick Copeland, who was on the
Be
previous
fun.
episode, and
Yeah.
just really working him over. Um,
Can't wait.
but final question, and this is what I ask Kim, this is what I ask everybody.
Sure.
So, what is it that gets Brian Pitzer out of bed every morning? What is it that really kicks you and says, "This is why I do what I do"?
I love the thrill of the hunt. I like the game. I like the challenge. Um, I like looking at every endeavor as you can't do this and muscling through it.
Right?
Um, I don't know why I'm wired like that, but that's what gets me going is, thinking just how difficult it really is, and then you start doing it, and it's not until you're about halfway through that you realize, wow, maybe I wasn't supposed to do that, but I've already done it. So I
Right.
love the challenge that comes with doing the impossible, and I love people that try to do the impossible because again, just doing it or trying to do it is three-quarters of the battle. So it's and it's life, right, Mike? I mean,
Right.
that's the nature of the beast. If you do what's safe, then how's that living, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, I always say too that you got to get out of your comfort zone if you're going to be successful. And there's a difference between your comfort zone and your safety zone. And your mind tries to confuse those pieces. But, getting
that's
on a
right.
phone and calling somebody and having them potentially say no is not going to kill you.
No,
Now, if it says you need to go run out in the middle of the traffic and run in front of cars to make a sale, that could kill you. So that's a difference between a safety
that's
zone
right.
and a comfort zone.
Yeah, that's
And
right. Spot on.
it, it's just one of those things where people do need to be willing to take a risk and go out and show what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah, yeah, spot on, and you're absolutely right. Getting outside of that comfort zone, to me, it's the name of the game for our company. It's all about evolving. It's all about growth. It's all about getting better, not just in business, but in life, and really seeing every day as a new opportunity to continue to evolve. And just simply that would be taking experience and making it better and making it better and making it better, and really seeing life through those eyes of getting better every day and getting outside of where you feel like you're good, and understanding things a little bit more, and continuing to better that. So
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's the best place to stop because we're like getting like super motivational here, and we'll just have everybody, going
yeah, don't
going
get me
super
raw
crazy.
raw in here, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, Brian, I want to thank you for doing this. This has been great. Thank you for everything you're doing. I mean, you're doing a ton of stuff in the community, and I do appreciate, you know, your friendship and getting to work with you. And this has been great, and I appreciate everything that you're doing and being on the Seeking Awesome podcast.
Hey, no problem. And definitely when we want to go after Rick a little bit, let me know. I'd love to be there with you to ambush him. So thanks again for having me. And it's fun always talking with you. And like you say, if we can help others in the process, then it's even more fun.
Great, thanks. So, in closing, I want to thank everybody who's watching today. Be sure to check out the show notes because we'll have links to Evolve Growth, and we'll have links to a lot of other things that we discussed today. And we super excited to have everybody listening, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.